You can start.
Good evening, everyone. I am Judy Bethley, and I serve as the co-chair of the Social Action Committee for Baton Rouge Sigma Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Before we begin our program, I'd like to introduce Dr. Leah Raby, who is on our chaplain team, and she is going to give us a word of prayer.
Good evening, everyone. We know that our Lord and Savior's line is never busy, and we can call him up and tell him what we want. God of our weary years and God of our silent tears. If the Lord don't help us, we can't stand the storm. Today we come humbly knowing God's grace is sufficient and his covering is omnipotent. Bless the sorority and the speakers with their wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. We ask that the conversation today that is imparted lights a fire under those that don't know or understand the importance of the right and the need to exercise their vote. In Jesus' name, because we know that you sit on the throne and all things are possible. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Dr. Raby, for that powerful prayer. According to our sorority's National Strategic Plan, each social action committee, all 1,000 chapters, must educate and raise awareness of the electoral processes. We must do this in order to increase voter registration and raise voter turnout. That is why we're so excited to host this webinar this evening, and we're so pleased that you have decided to join us. Our country recently recognized the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. One of the speakers at the march commented, "There are no white sheets, but there are judges in black robes on the Supreme Court who struck down Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act, making it easier to block people of color from voting. So we must continue to march and we must continue the fight." Leading our chapter's charge in continuing the fight and to make an impact on this community is our president, Dr. Ernest Singleton. Dr. Singleton works at the Louisiana Department of Education, where she serves as the Assistant Superintendent of Career and College Readiness. She is committed to ensuring students have multiple pathways to reach their goals upon exiting high school. I'm so pleased to introduce our president, Dr. Singleton.
Thank you, Judy Bethley. We appreciate your kind words this evening. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated was founded 110 years ago by 22 dynamic women on the campus of Howard University. Since that time, we have been focused on a number of issues, but the one topic that has been consistent over time is social action. Social action is what we do. I want to welcome you on behalf of the members of Baton Rouge Sigma Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated to this forum on knowing your voting rights. We look forward to hearing from this dynamic panel on what you should know and what you should be prepared for over the next few months as we enter election season. And now I want to turn it over to your moderator for this evening, Michelle McCallum.
Thank you, President Singleton. And hello, everybody. Good evening and welcome to our webinar, Voting Then and Now, Know Your Rights. I'm excited to serve as your moderator for tonight's important discussion, and we're even more excited that all of you are joining us tonight. You will hear from an esteemed group of panelists who are on the ground and working hard to fight for your voting rights. And they'll talk about their efforts, they'll talk about the changes in our voting rights, and they'll give us pertinent information that we all need to know to get ready for the upcoming election on October 14th. And we'll be talking a lot more about that shortly. But first, I want to introduce Dr. Etna Cozy. She is a community activist and a retired nursing professor from Southern University. And Dr. Cozy will share with us a historical perspective on her voting experience. Welcome, Dr. Cozy.
Thank you, Michelle. Good evening. Voting then and now. Then, in October of 1968, a senior in college, I turned 21. Following that, on a visit home to Gibson, Louisiana, Terrebonne Parish, my mother insisted that I register to vote, and I did. At that time, it was simple. All I had to do was be 21 and complete an application at City Hall. Then, in 1971, the voting age changed to 18 due to the military drafting of young men for Vietnam War. Men 18 years of age could be drafted to fight for their country, but they were not old enough to vote. Thus, Congress ratified the 26th Amendment of the Constitution to lower the voting age to 18. When I voted in my little country town, I was limited to 3 minutes in the booth. Regardless of your age, literacy status, or disability, no one was allowed to enter the booth with you. Because of the imposed time limit, voters would in advance write down the numbers of candidates on a piece of paper and take it into the booth with them in order to expedite the time and stay within the permitted time frame. Otherwise, votes were invalid if the 3-minute time limit was exceeded. It was tough, y'all. There were no Black election commissioners, no poll watchers, no early absentee or mail-in voting. If we were not able to vote on election day, we just missed the opportunity to vote. The history of Blacks voting prior to my age dates back to 1870, when the 15th Amendment of the United States Constitution granted Black men the right to vote. The 19th Amendment, ratified in 1920, granted women the right to vote. However, these amendments did not prevent white America from trying to suppress the Black votes, particularly in Southern states. Between 1895 and 1910, the grandfather clause was enacted in Southern states, which denied Black men who could read and write or own property the ability to vote. The grandfather clause stated that if your grandfather had not been a registered voter, then you could not vote. Being a former slave, that was impossible. However, this was struck down in 1915 as being unconstitutional. Meanwhile, in Louisiana, when the grandfather clause could not be applied, other methods were used to suppress Black votes, such as a literacy test. To take the test, which didn't make sense, Blacks had to be able to read and write, and then the passage of the test was determined by local registrars. On the other hand, if you were illiterate, in order to vote, you had to own property valued at least $300. That continued until the federal government intervened, sending federal registrars to the Southern states to help register Blacks. These were just a few of the tactics that were used to suppress Black votes. Not until August 6, 1965 did Reformation take place, when the Voter Registration Act was signed by President Lyndon Johnson, which prohibited states from imposing practices that denied Blacks the right to vote. Now, here we are in the year 2023. Not much has changed when it comes to Black voter suppression. Some things have improved, but there are still tactics being implemented to suppress the Black vote. The practices have not changed, only the methods. Now, we can still register by simply completing an application. Now, felons in Louisiana who have completed their parole or probation can register or re-register to vote. Now, seniors who are 65 years of age or older, or persons with a disability, can request a mail-in ballot. Now, we have early voting, absentee voting, and we are not subjected to waiting in long lines. Even with this in place, voter suppression is still high on the agenda of whites. They are just a little more sophisticated. They try to dialogue it through legislation. It's called gerrymandering, commonly known as redistricting. The United States Census Bureau indicates that in Louisiana, in 2021, Blacks constituted 32.4% of the population in Louisiana, and whites 57.9%. Yet of the 6 Louisiana congressional districts, only 1 is a minority majority district. Yes, voter suppression was prevalent then, and voter suppression is prevalent now. Whites recognize the power of Black votes. We just need to recognize that we have power through our votes by not only registering to vote, but also getting out to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cozy, for that passionate historical perspective. It certainly has laid the foundation for everything that we will talk about this evening. And yes, voter suppression is alive and well, and we'll be talking about that as well. Before I introduce our panelists, I want to let everyone know that we will be taking questions. The panelists will be taking questions. So please put your questions in the chat box or on Facebook. Dr. Michelle Dennis will be monitoring that and helping us out with that. Say hello, Michelle.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And as our host said, please place your comments in the chat and I will make sure they're forwarded appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dennis. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our great group of panelists. We're very excited to have them tonight. We have Representative Vanessa Caston-LaFleur from District 101, Attorney Ted James, Regional Administrator for the U.S. Small Business Administration and a former state representative, Chico Yancey, founding member and policy director of VOTE, Voters Organized to Educate. And we're happy to have a new panelist tonight. Caitlin Joshua could not make it, but she sent her boss, so we'll take that. We have Ashley Shelton, who is founder and CEO of Power Coalition for Equity and Justice. So welcome, everyone, and thanks again for joining us. Our first question will go to Representative LaFleur and Ted. Can you talk about the recent Supreme Court's decision on redistricting that will add another majority Black congressional district in Louisiana, what impact that will have on our state and what it means for our voters? And I'll start with you, Ted.
Well, thank you, Michelle, and good evening to the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta. I'm glad I was at home because I was able to go in the back and put my red and white on. Once I saw Vanessa in the spirit, I had to go and change. And thank you, Dr. Cozy. I almost feel that we should pivot and give this to Ashley as the architect of the litigation. So, Michelle, I would love to answer, but I think that because Ms. Shelton was the architect, I have to give deference to her and allow her to answer that first question, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all. Ashley?
No, also good evening, and I'm so grateful to be here tonight talking to you guys. And this question about this congressional district, I'm so proud and excited. This has been a long road getting here. We went through the redistricting process. I'm proud to say that through the road shows that happened preceding the redistricting session, we had over 1,000 people participate in those road shows across the state. We had more than 300 people attend the first several days of the redistricting session, have their voices heard, to be able to create a record, right? That in the instance that our legislature did not create fair and equitable maps, that there would be a record of the citizens of this state being very clear that they wanted fair and equitable maps. We went through several fights, several iterations. Judge Shelley Dick in federal court right here in Baton Rouge demanded that the legislature draw a 2-district map. They refused. And now we find ourselves, a few clicks down the road. The Alabama case has been, the ballot has set the stage for the fact that Section 2 is the law of the land. And because Section 2 is now, like they've reaffirmed Section 2, what I tell folks, it's like, this is what people in our state fought for. I've talked to folks old and young who understood the power of redistricting. We just heard Dr. Cozy talking about gerrymandering. And so what this moment is about people power. This moment is about what people can do when they have their voices heard. And so, no one thought this would happen. Everybody, the day before the decision came down, they told us to prepare for the worst. And I told them, I said, no, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And we have a clear pathway. So, we go to court October 3rd through the 5th. There will be a trial that begins the process for us finding our way towards this new map. And what this new map means is that in a state like Louisiana, where we only have one congressman, our only other minority congressman, voting for the infrastructure plan, and no other congressman in our state voting for this plan, or women, and that we have to be able to have leadership that understands that in the second poorest state in the country, we need infrastructure. We need protection from many of the things that all of our delegation voted down. And so this is one more voice that represents the people of this state, and that can bring resources and opportunity and voice to the experiences of the Black community. And so we are so excited. We will be in federal court in Baton Rouge, October 3rd through the 5th, and then at the 5th Circuit on the 6th. And so we are well on our way. And it is my, profound hope that we will have a map before the end of the year with 2 minority districts. And the people of Louisiana did this. The people of this state did this. And so we are so excited. And I think I'll close with what's most important about this seat is there is a lot of rhetoric about us, once we get these 2 districts, that we won't be able to actually get Black voters to turn out to hold these 2 districts. And so we have a lot of work ahead of us, but again, like I tell folks, we have proved that we have the power, and now we have to stand in that power. And we've got to vote on October 14th, and we've got to vote in 2024 when these seats come up for election. And so we're really excited. We're really hopeful. Lots of obstacles being thrown our way in terms of dates and doing away with the hearings. But, again, God has been with us, and we are moving forward. And so we are really grateful for this, really grateful to work with the people of Louisiana for fair and equitable maps. And then also excited that the lawsuit for the state maps starts in November. There's several lawsuits at the school board level, and there's also a lawsuit around the Supreme Court in the state of Louisiana. So we have lots of power that we need to collect in addition to this congressional seat, but we're on our way.
Good deal. Would you guys like to chime in? Any of the other panelists like to chime in on that?
So yeah, I want to say this, my former and favorite state representative, former Representative James, he's sitting back there being a little modest because leadership mattered also in the legislature. And while he was there, he provided excellent leadership that got us into this position. The coalitions that were built was built under his leadership. So I want to let everyone know that he's sitting back. And yes, Ashley should have certainly started off the answer to this question. But Ashley said something very important at the end, and that we need to pay attention to. These are opportunities. We love to say opportunity districts, right? That means we can get out. We have the power to get out and make sure these districts are brown districts, Black districts. This opportunity for us, our children, to look ahead and see someone that looks like us representing us. We cannot let the work of former Representative James, the work of Ashley and her group, of the vote group, go to waste as we fight, and they fight to get this district and to keep the one that we have, and we not show up at the polls. 7%, 9%, and 10% voter turnout is not going to work anymore for us to just maintain, because right now we're swimming trying to get back to where we are. Everything that was litigated by our great-grandparents, we're back to litigating that now. And the reason we're back to doing that now is we've forgotten about the power at the polls and the power to vote. And that is the message that has to go out now, henceforth, and forevermore.
Yeah, and it's, Vanessa, of course, thank you for those words. And Ashley, thank you for your leadership. But I want to take it even a step back to before the litigation, before the legislation, to the work of UDeltas with the census, because of course we had to make sure that we were counted, right? And it started, the redistricting process started in 2020. So the work that you all did to make sure that we were in areas where have not traditionally been counted, but for that, we would not have been able to get to the point where the legislation mattered. And of course, I was able to chair the Black Caucus at the time, but many of you show up at the Capitol. We worked extremely hard with Ashley, and we hired our own demographer with the help of Ashley and her efforts. And we literally, this is honestly the illustration of what happens when we work collaboratively as a community and recognize not just our strength, but the roles that we play in this process. So it was a process that started in 19 with preparing for the census, not knowing that we were going to do this shut down and in a pandemic with masks on and socially distanced. But you all helped to make this moment a reality, starting with the intention that you all placed on the census. So I'm going to tip my hat to you ladies as well.
Well, thank you all, and congratulations to all of you who had a hand in this. It's certainly good news for all of us in the state. A quick follow-up, Ashley, what is the timeline for creating this district? And you mentioned some of the trial that will go underway. What needs to happen between now and then? I know that a lot of things need to take place in order for this to come to fruition.
Yes, so we go to trial October 3rd through the 5th and as well to the Fifth Circuit on the 6th. And so that's the first step. And so when the Supreme Court stayed this case, he stated in the midst of, they literally stated the day before Judge Dick was supposed to present the 2-district map. And so we have to go back a little bit and have this trial, but the hope is that, with the trial being set with this timeline, that again, that Judge Dick will decide, right, and present a map, and then we do certainly expect the state to appeal. and when the state appeals, again, given the timeline, we're hopeful that even with an appeal that, by the early, January of 2024, we're still going to have a 2-district map and a 2-district map that's upheld by the courts. I think if you read the opinion by Chief, Justice Roberts, you were very clear, he was very clear, like, don't bring this back to us. And the Fifth Circuit has sided with us several times in this process as we've been in the court, in and out of the courts with redistricting. And so we feel confident that, all of the facts still stand, that Louisiana has not one enacted map that meets the requirements of Section 2. And so we're really grateful. And so October 3rd through the 5th, federal court in Baton Rouge is where it all starts. And we're hopeful, again, that by the end of the year, even with an appeal, we should have a map, end of the year, early January. And, and Ted said something very important. And one is, actually, Vanessa said something important first. She's so right about Ted and his leadership and kind of helping to start this process and lead this process. I think so much of this fight has been getting people to believe that it was possible for us to win, to believe that we were owed what we were owed. And that is a fair and equitable process that gives the 33% of Black voters in this state a real voice and the opportunity to elect candidates of choice. And that folks felt like it wasn't possible. And Ted always stood, firmly that this not only was possible, that there were clear pathways for us to win. And so thank you very much, Mr. James. And then also to those, like when we think about so much of the work that's ahead of us, it's about believing what's possible. And I think as voters in this state, I just keep saying over and over again, people keep telling me what we can't do. We can't elect a Black governor. Well, if you do the math real quick, you've got 33% Black voters. You've got 10 to 12% other voters of other communities of color. And then you have also progressively aligned voters that are probably coming around 10 and 12%. And so right out the gate, if we show up en masse, we can elect every statewide elected official in this state on the ballot on October 14th. And so again, this just goes back to, we have to have folks that believe in what's possible. And all of the folks that are joining me here today are all my colleagues and friends, and getting into good trouble. And that's what it takes, is collaboration, leadership, and support, and the belief that anything is possible, and certainly the right thing should be possible.
Thank you, Ashley. It's about keeping our foot on the gas, right? And being diligent. I want to pivot and talk about the upcoming election. The gubernatorial primary election is October 14th, as we know. It is a very important election. We will be electing the governor. We will be electing statewide offices, legislators, and other offices. And it's coming on the same day as the Southern University homecoming game. And we know historically that it is a challenge to get people to go to the polls during a game day. Kate, Ashley, and Vanessa, and anybody else that wants to chime in, what is being done to make sure that we get as many people registered as possible to participate in this very important election, and to make sure that they show up at the polls?
I can tell you there's a lot of collaboration that's going on. You've got Vote that's going to be participating in that effort. You've got Ashley's group, which is the Power Coalition. You've got, all our D9 brothers and sisters that will be participating, all the churches that will be participating. It's all about getting people out to vote. We know today, sitting here, that October 14th is election day. It is also just what you said, homecoming for Southern. We all know that once our people get on the yard, that's it. So we've got the drive to vote between September 30th and October the 7th. Those are the dates most important to us. That's actually the first election, right? There are two elections we got to be concerned with. We got to be concerned with the early vote and the actual election day, and mail-in ballots is another one too. So 3 all together, right? So right now, we need to be getting people registered to vote. There should not be a campus that isn't that has a ton of volunteers out there registering people to vote. I know that Ashley and Chico, and I know that my fellow D9 sisters that are on here now are planning this big event that is coming up, and I'll let you guys sort of talk about that. I think September 16th is the date. But right now, what is our goal? First of all, to let people know there's an actual election, because as you go out, you're still finding out people don't understand that we're about to elect a governor and a full slate of new leaders in the state of Louisiana. And we've got to make sure they know that. And that means collectively for us putting some funds together to make sure if we got to get on the radio just to say elections coming up and here are your options. I think those are things we need to start sort of talking about, putting that money out on the streets for that. Early voting, September 30th to October 7th. So important. Get people registered to vote, guys, because just what Ashley said, this is a possibility. It's a possibility in our lifetime. Who doesn't want to be a part of that?
And Vanessa's absolutely right. And I think that what we're excited about is that, we'll be all over the state doing, well, we have been and continue to be all over the state doing voter registration. We'll be at every Southern University home game until the 14th, registering folks to vote, engaging folks, on campus. Also, too, for early voting, we will be providing free rides to the polls. And as soon as we get that graphic and that phone number, we'll be happy to share that with our good friends at Delta Sigma Theta and push it out broadly to community. But we will be providing free Lyft and Uber codes. We do have sample ballots. If you want to spend some time with this ballot before you go into the booth, you can go on our website. They're all on our website at powercoalition.org. And also, we are happy to bring them to your church, to your community, to wherever you have people that are gathered that we need to be having these conversations about. And I think that we know early voting, to Vanessa's point, is where the magic happens. 50% of every Black voter voted in the state voted early for the presidential election in 2020. And we have to get back to those same numbers for this governor's race, because I think what no one is talking about is what's really at stake for this election. And it's more than folks realize. It's a governor who has single line item veto. This governor, that our current governor, has vetoed every voter suppression bill that has come across his desk and been able to hold those vetoes. This governor has, championed criminal justice reform. This governor has used his pen to prioritize, the needs and the interest of, Black communities. And I think, as we understand, one, we have a constitutionally powerful governor here in Louisiana, but then also two, also our attorney general, our treasurer, and then a series of of house members as well as Senate members. And so we have to make sure that we are putting people in place that are going to do the work of the people. And we are out here. We are also providing many grants to our D9 brothers and sisters as well as our churches. And so we are here. So if you've got ideas, you want to do a block party, please join us. And then on September 30th from 9 to 1, we'll be right outside of City Hall having an event with music and food and, ballots and voter information, and inviting people to go just walk right on down the way and vote at City Hall. And so we're trying to do as much as we can. We also know for the October 7th game, which is the last day of early voting at Southern, we will also have a party bus that will be picking folks up and taking them to go vote before the game starts. And so we are trying to be creative, trying to be thoughtful, and making sure that folks know what's at stake and have as much access to the ballot as possible.
Good, good. I like all of those ideas. And again, early voting is September 30th through October 7th. September 30th through October 7th. So we definitely want to get out to vote. When we talk about, people going on campus and not leaving campus to go vote, there seems to be voter apathy among African Americans. We bled, fought, and died for the right to vote, got our heads cracked open, and there still seems to be a lack of interest in voting, a seemingly lackadaisical attitude that their vote doesn't count. What would you guys like to tell people out there who still feel that way? I mean, what do we have to do to really get people to vote and to motivate them to vote and not have to go through this every election cycle?
I think that it's twofold, Michelle. Unfortunately, not all of our people are moved by reminders that people died for this right. Quite frankly, the younger generation, they are not as moved by that, right? I understand that I enjoy the shade of a tree that I did not plant, right? A lot of young folks don't. And we have to sometimes remind them of the consequences of inaction. We have to remind them of the fact that when you see so many people in so many states attacking something, they are attacking it because it is that vitally important, right? So those are the reminders that we have to give young people. And quite frankly, we have to have candidates that are going to start talking about issues that are going to move people so that they are excited about the possibility. I also think in our community, and my mom says this all the time, she's like, folks that are more like kind of mindset like us and I know you all are nonpartisan, but, Democrats, my mom says, Democrats always want to fall in love with the candidate. And on the other side, they just fall in line. Right. And we have to stop looking for perfection. And I think that from our side as the former elected official, we have to stop promising perfection because we are not. And we have to start laying out a vision and then being clear about how hard it is to transition from campaigning to governing. Right. And that way, the public doesn't expect perfection from the people that they elect, so that when we make mistakes, when we are not fully aligned, that does not mean that you stop and just fully neglect the process. So I think it's a combination of the way we talk about it, and we have to start talking about the consequences, like Ashley laid out, the things that are on the line. Criminal justice reform is on the line. What we teach our young people about our history is on the line. Many of the things that you all have sat in the Capitol fighting for on Red and White Day, all of those things are on the line. And I think that when you start to transition the conversation about what we can lose and why we are under attack, and not just that reminder that people marched and died, because unfortunately that message doesn't resonate with the younger generation anymore. And the communities that have the least amount of trust are unfortunately the same communities with the most need. So we have to remind them differently than we reminded my generation, because we knew when I was 18, I was more excited about a voter registration card than my driver's license, right? So it was very important for us, but we have to switch the dynamic of the conversation for this generation.
Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in?
You know, with all of this talk, I'm probably the old man in the room. Okay, I will be 78, God willing, in November, and I saw 63, and here we are with 2023, and I was a 19-year-old young man in the military and had a uniform on, and the CO would still call you, "Hey, nigga, come in," and we go TDY. And I couldn't go in the front and eat in a restaurant. I had to get my food from the back door. So like Ted said, these kids, they have no idea what that is. And so when I look at this, I see this as, wow, am I seeing this again in my lifetime? So, you know, when Ted and all of the folks push for former incarcerated people to get their voting rights, you know, we're out here working and doing and trying to get it. My motto is, I'll beat you to the polls. I vote early all the time. I don't worry about it. And hey, you know, and you know, in my family, I carry now 26 votes total family members. And they asked, so we have to go back to the old time. I put a collage together the other night for our monthly meeting from 1876 all the way up to now, when white supremacists, and they said it out loud in the Constitution, and it's in the minutes and everything, and they got together to stop everybody, Black folks, from having a vote, the literacy test, all these things. And then on the line in 1960, you got kids holding up signs saying, "Let my parents vote." And then when they got the opportunity to vote, I wish I'd have brought that picture with me. You had thousands of Black folks pushed up, getting to the polls. And back in those days, my granddaddy wore a suit and a little tie and a little hat. And it didn't matter how hot it was or what, you know? So when I look at that, that gives me inspiration to do what we do. Yesterday, we were in Parish Prison here, making sure that the men and women in there that are pretrial detainees that have not been found guilty of anything, that they're gonna have the opportunity to get their absentee ballot. Be watching it do that. So we're doing it in Orleans Parish, we're doing it in Lafayette, because we know the power of the vote. You know, I saw Ted the other day, you know, every time we talk and kick it, but he was very serious about trying to change some things. And Ted, you got a good successor. She is awesome. She is awesome. You told me it was gonna be that way anyway, though, you know. But you know, voting rights and voting, what we're doing, we're going to be on the street every day doing something in barbershops, passing out information. And we're looking for the former incarcerated person that's been out of prison, on parole, probation. You know, that person can now register to vote. You know, they make it a stumbling block. You got to go to your probation office. You got to do all that. Well, we cut some of the tape out of that, and they can mail you the letter. You know, I actually go to, I'm on parole. So I go to probation officers across the state and I ask to register other folks. And that's the kind of work that you have to do those things. So, you know, whatever we can do to help, we're here to help, and we're going to be there. And
Thank you.
One last thing. And the power of the vote, just remember, Myers won an election recently with 2 votes. 2 votes. If the other guy would have got 3 of his other friends, he could have won by 1 vote. So when people try to tell you your vote don't count, they don't really understand. We had our monthly meeting the other night, and I raised who wants potato chips, who wants Fritos. And somebody didn't raise their hand. I counted. I said, well, you don't count. But see those that didn't raise their hand, now you're going to have to eat Fritos for 4 more years. And I said, that's what's going on with the governor's race and all this what's going on. Because what you pick now, that's going to be for 4 more years.
Yes.
And it was laughing, but it's a real illustration of how important voting is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yancey. And I want to stay with you, and I want you to talk about the work that you've done in getting formerly incarcerated people registered to vote. The work that you're doing in that area, the work that you're doing now to simplify that process so that even more formerly incarcerated people or felons can vote. Tell us more about that.
Well, it's not just me, you know, it's a collection of other people that believe in what we're doing. VOTE stands for Voice of the Experience. And we started this action really about 40 years ago when we were incarcerated. I'm finding out, and we realized we were in a pickle and we needed people to help us. And the only way they could do that is by voting for people that care. And, you know, that's how we got involved. We knew that we couldn't, you know, prison was going to be prison. So we didn't want to stay there. We didn't want to be comfortable. We worked very hard. Norris did 27 years. I did 20 years. He got it in March of 2003. I got it September the 9th, 2003. He just celebrated his 20 years. I'll be celebrating mine in a couple of weeks. But guess what? We started this a long time ago to get our families and friends. And Pat Smith, former state representative, it took us 5 years to get that out of the committee. To get it out of committee, and that's part of the process. So what we do is very, very serious to us, okay, serious. So when we go and the guy come out, he's not on parole and everything. We had a guy that came out of prison 2 days ago. The second day he was at the registrar, he was signing up because he wasn't on no parole or nothing. So he had to go his first time, he signed up. So it's very serious. We got, you know, ladies doing it for the female side of this and everything. You know, I'll always be grateful to former Senator Dan Claiborne. I mean, for his statement about people wanting to vote. And it was real. Ted talking about I'm crying back in the back and all that, and I still get on him about that, but he was serious, and we had to put a face to it to let folks know this is a humanizing piece of legislation that can help and make a person feel like being a part of the community. So, you know, we have an office in New Orleans. We have an office here in Baton Rouge. We have an office in Lafayette. And it's all run by former incarcerated people. We employ right now, I think, 32 employees. And, you know, it's run again by former incarcerated people. We go back to the prison. Usually I go back up to the prison once a month. Norris goes to 2 or 3 prisons. And we make sure that those guys get their families involved. Because when your family get involved, it's easy to call me, to call Ted, or call a state representative. Can you help my child? Can you do this? So my first answer, are you a registered voter? Well, you know, when you get registered, come back and call me, you know, because we have to start demanding that people understand where we're at. If people don't understand how important this is, we're in a sad pickle right now that here's a guy that under 4 indictments. and guess what? He's still got followers. And we telling our people go vote, and they don't understand just how serious this is. This is serious stuff right now. And God gave us an opportunity to do some things. And, you know, I had a quote that I got from somebody the other day, and I'll share it with you. Opportunity usually shows up in overall, and it looks like work. This is work we got to do. Put your overalls on, put your big schools on, what you got to do. And hey, let's buckle down, get some people registered. And then we got to get them to the polls.
That's right.
That's the second part, you know. And I understand that you got to beg us to register, and then we got to beg you to go to the polls. We got to make it all kinds of ways, but we'll do what we got to do, because I think that this is an election that's going to be a turning tide for the state of Louisiana. If we think DeSantis is bad, if you think Abbott is bad, this boy here, Lil Jeff, hey, So Jeff gonna be terrible because I had somebody talk to somebody that's looking at his days when he was a deputy. See, nobody's pulled that record up and look at that incident and see what was he like a deputy.
Yeah.
Because the first
definitely.
commercial was my mama was a school teacher, my dad was an architect, but I'm a poor boy. I'm saying, oh, okay, really? And then a deputy, so these games that they play with us, he said he ain't even show up for a debate.
Yeah.
Guess what? We should leave him right out there.
We know.
Leave him right out there.
Mr. Yancey, I want to get back to the getting the felons registered to vote. I know you said that it's difficult to capture the numbers, but how many felons do you think, or formerly incarcerated people do you think have registered to vote, and how many are eligible, or how many are eligible to vote, and how difficult is it to get that word out to even let them know that they are eligible to vote?
It's difficult because when a person comes out of prison and their mindset is completely different. You have to understand that this is something we're doing civic. It is hard to let them know, but we're in every probation office when they come home. When we go back up to the prisons, we're telling them. We devised a plan called J-Pay through our office. They got tablets up there now, so we make sure that people get involved and know that, hey, when you come out, you got to walk a straight line. In 5 years, you can become a registered voter. We do the hard work to do those things. We will continue to do those things. There's nothing going to stop us from doing it. We're in churches. We're in, like I said, we're in the prisons. We're all that to let folks know. And then we got to get them to get their families involved. So when you come to our monthly meetings, we got the families there. Instead of asking us what we can do to help, we need you now to make sure you get your people registered and you go vote, so we can bring somebody with us like my granddad and them used to do. Everybody dressed up to go, and hey, you just struggle on, you had to go. But with the former incarcerated, the stumbling block has been that the Secretary of State, first of all, didn't put it on the website that FIPs could now be eligible to register to vote. We had to do all of the work. We had to take him back to court. We had to sue him. He finally put it up there. But we had to do all of the work. We had to put our money in all the advertisement. We had to do everything. The state, the Secretary of State, nobody helped us. And our biggest problem is some of the registrars. We had the incident up in Union Parish. A young man he was eligible to register to vote, went to his probation officer, got the letter. And when he went in, this white lady told him, said, boy, if you don't get out of here talking about voting, ain't you on parole? Let me call the sheriff. You come back in there. He sent us a note and say, hey, I don't never want to vote. I don't want nothing to do with that. So just think he's telling somebody else that. So it is hard to do this, and I'm hoping that everybody on this call understands that former incarcerated people that now have the right to vote, they make good citizens, I pay my taxes, and we do what we're supposed to do. Again, our executive director, Norris Henderson, we were in prison together. That's my partner, but this work is serious. But we're doing this work across the country. It's called FICPFM, Woman Convicted Persons and Family Movement. I get emotional sometimes with this, but we're trying to do this across the country to educate our people. I said in Florida, they got the right to vote, and they put a poll tax on and put them in jail. So this is a hard thing, but thank y'all for having us.
Okay, I'm going to pause right there, and I think that we have a question in the chat. Dr. Dennis?
Yes, we do have one question, and Attorney James did address it in the chat, but I do want to put it out for the public. The question is, how do we break the cycle? As a high school English teacher, I found a lot of my students are reluctant to register to vote because their parents or guardians have the mindset of not voting or our votes not holding weight. How do we break that cycle?
Yeah, what I said is find a way to make it personal and tie it to an issue. For young women out there in an election because we didn't love Hillary, right? She wasn't so as exciting, right? Like, you know, she was mean, right? Like, you know, so too many of us supported somebody else, right? That allowed the president to appoint lifetime judges to the Supreme Court. And we have to remind our young people about the civics of it and remind them about the process, but, you know, make it plain, right? Young women, because in the election, a group of people decided a family health decision for you, right? The affirmative action decision, right? Like some of the schools that may be on your wish list, right? You know, your ability to go there has now been impacted. Some of the things that I work on with the SBA, the affirmative action decision has limited. In the federal government, we have goals for small disadvantaged business. Those are Black-owned businesses, Hispanic-owned, 5% contracting goals. Those are under attack now. We have a program for young people. If you're interested in construction, welding, if you're interested in securities, IT, we have a program that allows Black people to get contracts from the federal government without competing. That program is basically, we can't accept applications now because the affirmative action decision has been used to stop our equity programs in the federal government. So it's impacting you, young person, that you like building, you want to be an engineer. Your ability to go out there and get contracts has now been impacted because of these decisions that started because of an election that didn't go the way that it should have gone for people that believe that you believe. This may be unpopular with some of the more senior folks out there, but you know, I've learned that you got to talk to young people about things that they appreciate. The legalization and the decriminalization of marijuana that's how you get young people's attention when you remind them who makes those decisions, right? The monetization of it across the country now, when it is still a crime in the state of Louisiana, you talk about that process, and you have to talk about some of those things that move the young people, and because they are not. They're not thinking about some of the things that we are thinking about. So we have to find a way to make it personal to them. And I think that young people really respond when they know that they are under attack. I think that it reminds them how important some things are. And quite frankly, we have to tell our young people that we don't get the benefit of just being young, right? Like we have to think about life 5 and 10 years in advance. And we have to tell them that it's not a burden, it is a responsibility and a charge, right? And a lot of times I have these heavy conversations with young people, and I try to remind them, yes, it may sound hard, but it's much easier than what our grandparents had to go through, right? So, you know, this is hard for us, but it's really easy, right? And you have to just break it down to them in a language that they can grasp and feel, because unfortunately, what you all told me, right? I can't go into the high school that I went to with the same message that was given to me. That high school is McKinley Senior High School, for those of you who didn't know. For Vanessa.
You tagged me in. Go Bulldogs, Baton Magnet High School.
Yes.
High school you were supposed to go to. I think you're outnumbered here, Ted. You're outnumbered here.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to help Ted out right quick. The number someone just texted me. We're between right now 15,000 that we know to maybe 18,000 registered former incarcerated people. The number that it should be that we were looking at, it was anywhere from 40 to 70,000 people that may be eligible with different kind of convictions than what was ruled in the case and stuff. But that is a whole voting block, as Norris and all of us say all the time, waking up the sleeping giant, the Black and brown, the former incarcerated people that you can bring to the table now, and you can make changes at the ballot box. So it's very important. And I'm like Ted, when I'm talking to guys, how is this going to benefit me? Well, you got a son here, you got a grandchild. You need to know who you're electing to office. You know, you're not going to win everything. I mean, Ted left us at ACJ and we didn't know what we were going to do, but but we survived. You know, we just kept plugging at it because his thing to us was, hey, man, just keep going. You're doing the right thing. You know, at Ashwood, and I would always say, hey, let's get in some good trouble. Let's create something and make them think, you know, I mean, and when you're going down there to make changes in the law, especially with a former incarcerated person, and you got somebody like Debbie Villio and you got other folks on the committee, you only got Marcus Bryan sometimes. You got Representative LaFleur, you got Knox that came in, and you got Denise, and we had Joe Marino that understood criminal law, that understood what the law was. And those are the only votes you could get out of there. They put people on there that didn't even want to be there, but because they wanted to show something and come down hard, then that's what they did and did that committee. And again, Ted told us this: you have to be careful who you support. So when the Black Caucus put one person as speaker and all that, he left them out in the dark once he got the seat. So we have to hold people accountable for those kind of things. You know what I mean? And Ted told us that, hey, watch what you're doing and watch what's going on, because, you know, you can be sold out in a minute, you know? So we tell our people, the FIPs, is get involved. And one of our mottos is educate, educate, educate. And then you can organize, and then you can mobilize people. And that's because everybody's been educated on what we're doing. And right now, getting our people registered, getting them to the polls, that's what we got to do.
And I will tell you, Michelle, I have tried to start telling young people, honestly, I need their help. And for me, their help is in their vote. And it's exactly for the reason that Mr. Yancey just told you. We are sitting in committees where we're outnumbered and we can't get good bills out that will help our people, that they will sit at home and be mad at us because we couldn't get a bill out of committee. Well, look what you sent for me to work with, right? Don't send people who are not going to help me advance for Black people sitting in these rooms and on these committees. Send people to help us do your bidding in all of these elections. That's why you can't sit it out. I mean, we fought just to have people come to the microphone who had traveled miles to get to the Capitol to speak. They start a rule that says, okay, no, one of you can speak from your group. This is America. Everybody that showed up today can speak from the group, but that's a vote. So you got 4 of us that's firmly saying, let everybody speak, and the rest of them are saying something else. We need you to send us help to do your work. Ashley, you've heard me say this, and I'm going to keep saying it until people understand. Voter apathy is a privilege, and it's one that Black folk cannot afford. Cannot.
Yeah. You know, one of the things, you know, Mr. Yancey, he mentioned the registrars across the state. And a lot of times we focus on those elected, but registrars of voters are lifetime appointments in our state, right? And I will give $5 to the first person without Googling that can tell me the name of our registrar here in the parish. I'm looking at the chat. Do not Google, right? and if we don't know who the registrar is, y'all, we have to know who these people are, just like we could name all 5 of the housewives, right? We have to be able to spit this person out, because we have one of the bills that I filed with the help of Ashley and the Power Coalition, and Dr. Cozy mentioned not the clerk of the court, like who's the registrar of voters. We increased the number of minutes in the voting booth from 3 minutes to 6. But there's also a provision in there that if there's a lengthy ballot, the registrar can allot more time. So that means we need to know who that registrar is. We had a event, Ashley's talking about the event that they're working on September 30th outside of City Hall. Many years ago, we had a similar event right on the Saturdays of early voting, and folks from the other side tried to shut us down, saying that we were too close. We had the registrar, who was a friend, who came out and said, oh no, they are well within their rights to be where they are, right? They tried to stop Southern University's marching band from coming down, saying that we were having a partisan event. The registrar said, these folks have come in, they have the right permits to be where they are, they have the right messaging to be where they are, but we have a registrar who is friendly, right? We have to make sure that all across the state that that person, the person that appoints that person, is friendly too. So it's not always the elected people, it's the appointed folks that also wield a lot of power and discretion. And we got to look at those things as well. His name is Steve Rayburn. Nobody,
Yeah,
I'm
Steve,
keeping my
yeah.
$5. I'm
Right.
keeping my $5.
You
Well,
let
me and Chico knew, but we didn't want to cheat it. But this is, we all knew, but
We all know now. We all know
he
now.
was on the news the other night.
Yep.
We're
Well,
going to go back to the question, the chat box. I think we have another question. Dr. Dennis?
Yes, we do have one more question. As an out-of-state student, I tried to look up how to register to vote in this state. How can out-of-state students register to vote? Is there a certain time period that I must live in Louisiana before registering? And I'll pose this to Ms. Shelton.
Yeah, no, we register students every day, all day. And in fact, several years ago, they were kicking out voter registrations from Southern University because they said Southern's address was not correct. And so really, I mean, once you are here, once you have come to school here at Southern University, LSU, wherever you are, Grambling, you have the ability to register to vote. And you are here, you are living here, you are benefiting from our schools, Go grants, and all of these other things that are given, that come from, being a citizen in this state. And so all you have to do is go to the Secretary of State's website. They have the website is crazy, but the app, the Go Vote app actually works. And so just go to the Secretary of State's office and register online. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can also you got up until, let's see, the 13th to submit a paper ballot. I'm not looking at it.
Yes, I have it here. The deadline to register in person is September 13th.
Yeah.
The deadline to register online is September 23rd. And the deadline to request an absentee ballot is October 10th. Again, those dates are the deadline to register in person is September 13th, deadline to register online, September 23rd, and the deadline to request an absentee ballot is October 10th.
And so I just encourage everybody. I mean, and we do have problems all over the state. Tulane University, Loyola, wherever we go working with young people, there is always an issue because they know young people they vote a certain way. And so at the end of the day, we have to do that. And then also too, if you run into any trouble, there's always a hotline, I want to say it's 1-866 Our Vote. And so we tell folks to use the hotline. If you are registering and having an issue, then call the hotline. It is staffed with lawyers that can tell you what your rights are and what needs to happen in order for you to have a valid, voter registration here in the state of Louisiana. And so we work with the Legal Defense Fund very closely. Vote has a lawyer we work with very closely. And so there are lots of us that are on the ground and here to support. And so if you're trying to register to vote and you're running into issues, I always tell folks, call the hotline, call Power Coalition, call Vote, call one of us, and we'll help you walk through the process and make sure that you become a registered voter here in the state of Louisiana.
I'm glad you brought that up, Ashley, because there has been a attitude and a spirit of voter suppression, as Dr. Cozy talked about earlier. In Georgia and Florida, laws are just making it a lot more difficult for people to access the voting booths. What kinds of things are being done in Louisiana to address those issues that are becoming more and more rampant in this political climate? And anybody can answer that question.
Well, I honestly, and Ashley mentioned it earlier when she talked about the fact that we've had a governor that has vetoed things. And honestly, even in a very conservative legislature, we have been able to get voting rights bills favorable to us passed, right? From increasing the time voter in the voting booth. I know Fred Jones has something. Ashley, I can't remember.
We expanded early voting for presidential elections.
That's right.
And
Early
most
voting for federal.
recently
That's
for
right.
folks with disabilities to have
That's right.
access to
Yeah.
more
So
staff and support.
yeah, so by and large, we have been able to advance and also defeat, some legislation. We also, have to be more aggressive. And I'm gonna pick on my alma mater a little bit. Every student, once they get a key to their dorm at Southern, should get a voter registration card. Period. Right. Every dorm head, we should have a list and look at the voter rolls to make sure that our students are registered to vote. It is equally as important as making sure that they have a meal plan, right? And that's us, right? That is a decision that can easily be made. And we talked about it for years, right? And there are, we talk about the football schedule. I know that a lot of those things are beyond our control with scheduling of games. And, homecoming, that might not be beyond our control, but we can insist that a student is given a voter registration card when they are given a key to their dorm, right? And when they move, we have to remind them that you are still registered to vote, but, if you want to change it, you can. But I think that it is strategically, we have to really stress early voting, especially for those out-of-state folks, because once they move off Southern's campus and move into an apartment, you still can vote here, but it has to be either early or you have to go back on the campus to vote on the election day. And we have to start talking about it in voter, in orientation. We got to talk about it and make it a culture for the students. Like, we welcome you to Southern University, and just like we pride ourselves on our band and our football team, our students are voters here, right? And we have to make it a culture, and we can do that irrespective of the efforts that may be done onto us. We got to start playing a lot more offense.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Just want to remind, go ahead.
Oh, no, I totally agree. And also too, we have to make it easy. I always tell folks, nobody wants to go in the voting booth and feel like they don't know what to do. Right. And so, creating and accessing tools like sample ballots. Everybody can pull their ballot straight from the Secretary of State's website. You can go on Power Coalition's website and we have sample ballots. Vote. They just released an amazing scorecard so you can understand how these folks voted on key legislation. Our very own Vanessa LaFleur got 100%. On that scorecard. And so, there are resources and tools that are out there so that folks can go into the booth feeling confident, and also to reminding folks like the power of their vote. I mean, we talked about it a little earlier. I mean, we had a judge's race come down to 2 votes. We've had House reps elected by 3 votes. I mean, and so when you start thinking about how small these numbers are, it is, there is power in your vote, and it is evidenced by it. Again, Norris always says, it's all about who's willing to fight one day longer and do the work of turning out one more person so that, we can have the kind of outcomes. Because if you look at the state map, 46% of every House seat and Senate seat went unchallenged. So we also have to work on making sure that as we're registering and getting folks engaged in this process, and part of that offense is them also understanding that they are a part of the solution, that, they can get involved. They should think about what it means to run for office, what it means to be a leader in that way, because we've also got a bench problem as well. Like, we need to grow and broaden the bench. And it doesn't just mean running for office, but it is certainly taking leadership and community and and helping other people, again, kind of come to their voice. And I always, talk about agency, because in Louisiana, we have folks that have been so structurally and systemically beat down by so many different policies from criminal justice all the way down to fines and fees and the things that we know keep Black folks trapped in criminalization and poverty. But what we have to also help people, connect to is that we have the ability to change these outcomes, and it starts with their vote, and it starts with their voice, and that you do have agency. And even if the world is telling you don't matter, we don't care about you, we're not, and it feels like that because they're passing policies that certainly say they don't care about us. And so in order to change that, we've got to keep showing up. And there's an arrogance now at our state capitol, where I feel like they feel like they can do whatever they want to. And so we've got to make sure that we don't end up with a supermajority in the House and the Senate this coming legislative session, because then where we do have places of power, like having someone like Devontae Lewis elected to the Public Service Commission, it is a independently, very powerful body. But, when you have a supermajority, you can do things like a constitutional convention or and bring together the members to take power away. And so here we have an advocate that's trying to hold energy accountable, talk about the grid, talk about renewable energy, talk about the business opportunities for communities. And so, but again, his voice can be neutered in no time if we aren't looking at the whole field. And so your vote absolutely matters, and it's all the way up and down the ballot. Complete the ballot. You don't have to know every single answer, but again, get you a sample ballot, talk to some folks, get your pen, figure it out, but complete the ballot. Because also we have Bessie, we have several different seats, local initiatives that are going to be on the ballot. And so at the end of the day, make sure that you complete your ballot, because it's not just vote for the governor and leave the booth. We need you to vote all the way down and make sure that we are putting people in office that are going to do the right thing and vote. And I always talk about our children. One of the things that occurs to me is that, we always attack our children, unfortunately, at our legislature. And, and I feel like all we offer our children is jail, poor educational systems, and, and no funding for early childhood education. And it's not okay, right? And we have to be able to fight for our children in a different pathway. And so I just offer all of that to just say, let's get in there. Let's understand our agency as a voter, and that you do have agency as a citizen.
Thank you, Ashley, for that. We are wrapping up, and I'm going to let you go. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Ted said something that I'm going to remember putting these two things together, and that is voting is your meal plan. Simple. We can explain that to our children and to the younger voters. You want to eat steak and lobster? Because they do. You need to vote so that the economy is there for you. Vote people in that's going to vote the right way so that you can eat your steak and lobster for the rest of your life, right? But voting is your meal plan. Think about that.
Yeah, that's good. And in college, you're always looking for that free food. So,
And like I said, we have
first thing that have to do with food, you're ready to go. We're going to have to wrap up in a few
What
minutes.
else we have to do is we have to understand people, tell people what the governor does, some of the things, not just pardons and stuff, what Ashley talked about, what the lieutenant governor does, what the secretary of state does. I mean, the treasurer, I mean, we sent a guy that was a treasurer for a year. Now he's making decisions in Washington talking about draining the swamp, and now he's a swamp, So Kennedy came from a treasurer, and all they had was one liner, and people voted for him. So people have to understand who they are voting for, what these offices do, and let's do it intelligent. That's what we do with our people coming out of prison. We tell them what these people can do and how they can help the family, how they can help with education, and how important it is.
Thank you, Mr. Yancey. We do have one more question, and then we're going to wrap up and turn it over to Dr. Sheila Lewis. Dr. Dennis?
One last question, and it was addressed in the chat as well. It speaks specifically to registering people to vote. So they wanted to know whether or not, are you allowed to give any promotional items to encourage voter registration, whether it be food, T-shirts, gift cards, anything like that? Just for registration, not necessarily the voting.
Yeah, so for registration, I mean, I think that we have T-shirts, we've got food. I mean, I'm all for the parties. Folks love parties, so we're gonna have a DJ wherever the DJ is needed, wherever food is needed. And it's not that we're in that case, again, as long as it's available to everyone, we don't get in, that's the easiest thing. Nobody gets in trouble and we don't have to worry about it. And it's less of an issue with registration. It's more of an issue when folks are actually going to vote. And so on Pretty Wednesday, during early voting, when we're on Southern's campus, We're gonna have food, a DJ, a good time, and everybody can participate, get your t-shirt, do whatever. And we hope you get on the bus, but you don't have to get on the bus, right? So as long as it's available to any and everyone, then it's fine. And even with the events right next to City Hall, you know, I cracked up because the police officer was eating his ice cream and doing the, you know, the Cupid shuffle, and and I mean, he wasn't going that day, but you know, he was enjoying himself and having a good time. And so as long as it's available to everybody, you're safe.
Yeah, and I would jump in, and I know we got the, you know, pause, and this is, you know, in for the night, but you know, we also with young people, we have to like, and Mr. Yancey said it, right? It's the registration, is the education, and then it's mobilizing them to actually go through it. And one of the things with young people is, it's one thing to show up, it's another thing to show up and stay. Right. And just going there and saying, hey, register, and then never showing up. You know, in 2019, we had a competition among high schools in Baton Rouge. Madison Prep showed up, and their cheerleaders were there cheering on those high school students that were voting for the first time. Capital High School brought a bus, right? Like we had a whole competition going on, but it started months prior with registering them, talking to them about the process. And you got to be careful, because there was an effort, you know, last year at a church that, you know, some of our folks kind of maybe taking it a little too far, or got accused of taking it a little too far. But when you show up and provide the information, and there's nothing wrong with giving people a ballot, and young people are going to, you know, Delta Sigma Theta has shown up in my school 3 times. They talked to us about voting, they registered us, and then they sponsored a bus. So when Michelle McCallum gives them a suggested ballot, they are going to trust that, because you have shown up and you have stayed and you've invested in them. And those are things that you know, adopt a school, right? The D9, every chapter, every group, we can adopt a school during early voting and make it happen. And the students do it. You know, I made the comments about Southern, but I'm not, you know, I'm always challenge my alma mater, but you know, I'm gonna give the young people, the SGA, they always do. They have buses, and they do it. Ashley talked about the Pretty Wednesday. They get a bus, and they take students all day long during early voting to the early voting location in Baker, right? So I'm not going to say that Southern doesn't actively get involved. I'm just going to challenge us to do better, because we always can. That's all I got. I could talk about this all night, though.
Well, we could talk about it all night too. Thank you guys so much for this great conversation and for helping to better educate us, better inform us, and give us really important information on what everyone needs as we head to the polls during this very important election. So thank you for being with us. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sheila Lewis. She is the chairman of our Social Action Committee, and she will have some closing remarks and a call of action. Dr. Lewis?
Yes, it's kind of difficult to come behind these outstanding, dynamic, intelligent panelists, but I'm gonna give it my best. First of all, I want to thank Mr. James for wearing the right colors. You look nice in your red and white. And then Mr. Chico, red, white, and blue will always do. So thank you. Where do we go from here? I heard some suggestions from each of you. And when we talk about Southern University's homecoming being a off limit, so to speak, for voter registration, I think it's on limit. I think we got to try something different. I think that during halftime, why not give all of the fans a voting card, pause during halftime, and let them use a QR code to register to vote? That's entertainment, but entertainment for the right reasons. Once we do that, then we need to take a look at how do we get people in our churches, because believe it or not, a lot of them are not registered. People in some organizations, not Delta Sigma Theta, of course, to register. We've got to touch all bases of groups, organizations that we are a part of to ensure that they are registered to vote. Dr. Cozy talked about redistricting. I was selected by the national president of Delta Sigma Theta to serve as a cohort member of the first cohort to address redistricting. I also spoke at the state legislature. I don't know, Ashley, if you remember that, and also Representative LaFleur. But I got to tell you, there was compassion in the room that day because it is the day that we lost a national president. And our counterpart friends paused and they prayed with us. So I thought that that was outstanding. I also think for the children, Representative LaFleur, we need to create some type of program for children and call it the red, white, and black. Now, the red is going to stand for the blood of Jesus, the white for purity, and black would represent Black Lives Matter. I think we can come up with a curriculum that would speak to that. I'll talk to you about that later on. But where do we go from here? From my research, the data shows that only 70% of adults nationwide vote. So then we've got a problem. What happened to the 30% who have chosen not to vote or they are not registered? We've got to go about the business of identifying these people, getting them registered to vote, and that way we will increase our numbers so we can put the right people in office. We've been enlightened today by our panelists and our special guests as to why it's important to vote. We understand that voting back then versus voting now share some common issues and challenges, but it will take all of us to ensure that we keep our right to vote because it's threatened now. They're trying to take it away from us. We cannot afford to let the clock turn back. I refuse to let the clock turn back. If we want to advance healthcare, go vote. Healthcare is a problem for our people. If we want to protect the environment, go vote. If we want to promote social justice, Mr. Yancey, as well as health and safety of all Americans, we got to go vote. If we want to hold elected officials accountable, go vote. If we want to prepare for the census, which occurs in 10 years, we need to be researching what we need to do to submit the information that will be needed to complete the census so that we can share with our family and friends, and so that you'll know from the census, the outcome is the drawing of maps during the redistricting process. So if we want that second Black congressional leader, we got to go vote. That's the bottom line. And we can do this. I think people are more in tune with what's going on in our communities. Some of us think they're not, but they are. Who wants to not be able to ride in the front of a bus or in the front of an airplane? I know I don't want to give up that right. Go vote. On behalf of Baton Rouge Sigma Alumni Chapter, I extend a great big thank you to Dr. Michelle Dennis, our co-chair for social action, Judy Bethley, our co-chair for social action and the coordinator of this webinar. Judy and I have been working together for the last 5 years. She's one of the hardest working women I have ever met. We want to thank our president, Dr. Ernie Singleton. She's come with her vision, and she's had a vision that she wants to go parish-wide with our programs. I love that idea because what some of you already know, in the Southeast area of Baton Rouge, there are lots of African Americans on Millerville Road, O'Neill Lane, Sherwood Forest, Goodwood, Woodlawn Estates, Shenandoah with a huge population of African Americans. I say this because many times people think that in the Southeast area where I live, that there are only white people. That's not true. In my subdivision, when my husband and I first moved in our home, there were only 5 Black families at the time. That was in 1984. I can tell you this, there are lots of African Americans in Woodlawn Estates now. We have got to identify locations in Baton Rouge, be it barbershops, beauty shops, brick playgrounds, churches, wherever people go, we want to be out there with what we're going to call the vote patrol. And how that's going to work, some of us might be in Woodlawn, some of us might be out by River Bend, some of us might be in Shenandoah. We will have a vote patrol out registering voters. Since our president wants to go parish-wide, and we're excited about that. We also want to thank our chapter members, the social media audience, Dr. Edna Cozy, our guest, special guest, Michelle Michaela, you did an outstanding job as our moderator. Representative Vanessa LaFleur, Attorney Ted James, we need you to come back home, Attorney James. He's working with the Small Business Association. Mr. Chico Yancey, my dear friend, you are to be commended for the solid, excellent work you're doing with former incarcerated people. 15,000 have already been registered. Let's give him a big round of applause for that. Thank you so much and keep it up. Caitlin, in the absence of Caitlin Joshua, Ashley, we want you to know, Ashley Shelton, that we appreciate your presence. Dr. Leah Raby, who engaged us in the meditation, and those of you who saw the flyer, Leah is also very creative and talented. She designed the flyer for this event. Chandra Elsie, I couldn't do what Mrs. Elsie does, because if the computer goes out or Zoom goes out, that's a problem for me, but she handles it so well. She is so professional. Thank you, Chandra. I want to remind everyone of some very important dates. Take advantage of early voting. You've heard that a number of times. We are going to. September 30th through October 7th. Watch out for voter suppression, as Dr. Cozy spoke to. The election will be held October 14th. I know which candidate I'm going to support. I hope you know which one you're going to support. But as an organization, we're nonpartisan, and I can't tell you how to vote. And then, of course, November 18th, there's a runoff election. Tune into this. September 16th has been declared as National Voter Registration Day. We will be in partnership with the NAACP. Please join us at Charles Kelly Center on September 16th. We'll have a voter registration drive and a food drive. These conclude my remarks. I'm going to turn it back over to our moderator. Take it, Michelle Michaela.
Thank you,
Thank you
Dr.
all.
Rose, for those great remarks and that insight. And again, thank you everyone who participated. Thank our panelists. We know that you're very busy and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us tonight. Thank our audience who participated and everybody that Ms. Lewis thank you. And we will continue this conversation. We will continue to be diligent and we will continue to remind people that your vote is your power. So have a good evening, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.